Hello everybody, my name is Boulevard, and welcome to the 100th Tournament Tactician. Now, I went back and looked at some of the old Tournament Tacticians. It wasn't always a tier list thing, originally I was just kind of going over tournament results and giving my opinion on things because I was still trying to break into the casting scene for Runeterra, trying to get on Duels of Runeterra, Jam Fest, whatever big pop-in tournaments were happening at the time, and obviously it was pretty successful given where we are now. But I think the tier list was a good move for the direction of this series overall, and I like being able to use these as historical evidence for when people talk about past metas. I can go back and look at my own videos and be like, okay, here's what happened. Because I have noticed a couple times people will be like, oh, well, remember like this meta where this deck was very dominant. And then I go back and I look at my videos where I'm covering tournaments and I'm looking at the spreadsheets from those times. And it's like, actually, this deck really didn't do much at the time. It happened recently, even when I was talking about, what are like the 5 best decks in Runeterra history, and people were bringing up Azir Aurelia, and when you looked at the tournament performance for on-release Azir Aurelia, it was awful. It was really bad. And I think Darkodius had mentioned that like he didn't think that there was a good lineup for Azir Aurelia at the time, and that's why, which, makes sense. But it was one of those things where like I was able to go back and check because I have this series, so I have these things like this tournament history in Runeterra, which I think is really cool, which is why I like doing this series and why I will continue to do it. No matter what I am doing in Legends of Runeterra, I like to have things documented, and that's kind of what Tournament Tactician is and it always has been. So even if my tier list isn't always 100% accurate, I can kind of go back and look at what it progressed as through the course of a meta to get an understanding of what things looked like. So yeah, now with the sappy stuff out of the way, now that I've taken 90 seconds of your time, let's get into the actual tier list. Not a whole lot exciting going on this weekend, just an online league series, but because it is the end of the meta, and because we already got that cool graphic from the Legends of Runeterra team about what is getting nerfed and buffed and new cards in the next balance patch on Wednesday, nobody's really excited about this format, and nothing has really changed since last week. I feel like I had a very good nail on what we are actually looking at meta-wise, and it is still that not quite triangle format of Yordles and Arms, Control, and Shurima. Now, last week, Yordles and Arms was alone in Tier 1 because I was having a little bit of trouble sort of nailing down what I thought the best Shurima deck was and what I thought the best Control deck was. I feel like Feel the Rush was the best positioned Control deck, but I thought that was going to transition now that it was more of a known factor, as we're seeing more triple Shurima, which means more copies of Rite of Negation, which is something that Feel the Rush doesn't deal with particularly well, especially when coupled with Quicksand. So I thought something would rise up to take the throne away from FTR, maybe a control deck that was a little bit better against Shurima, and just nothing came of it. So when we look at these individual archetypes, Feel the Rush is closer to the rest of the control field than like Sundisk is to the rest of the Shurima field, and Yordles and Arms next to sort of everything that doesn't fit into these first two categories. Also, I think that's actually it, is like I moved these up to tier 1 because I kind of identify the best Shurima and the best control deck, and then that was more or less it. I think I like swapped Zillion Echo and Ziggs Talia. A rant that I've had in my brain that I haven't really known where to like post, if I should put it in a Giant Slayer video, talk about it on Twitter, is why Sundisk and Zillion Echo feel so bad to play against. And it is this weird counterplay, like no counterplay playstyle where none of these champions, speaking of Azir, Xerath, and Zillion, because sorry, Azir, Xerath, and Echo, because Zillion doesn't really matter. Echo's kind of a Shurima champion. They don't have to be on the field in order to level up. Like, all of their level up conditions are just, you have to do this thing. I don't have to see it happen. And then they don't actually need the champion to survive. Azir, Xerath, and Echo just have to touch the field, and it completely changes the deck. Zillion Echo is a great example of this, where, like, it doesn't matter if you never stick a leveled Echo. You care about turning on Voice of the Risen, getting those chrono breaks into your deck, activating Absolver, and it's the same thing with Sundisk. Even if you can't stick an Azir or a Xerath, getting the Emperor's deck active, drawing the copies of Azir and Xerath from the Sundisk ascending, does mean that you will have access to these champions. And what is your opponent really playing that is going to kill, like, your 5/9 Xerath and your 6/6 Azir while dealing with the Emperor's deck? The other problem is that the protection is very punishing, where if you get ruinated and you deny that, that's not a punish. What they do with the 5 mana that they have gained over you from denying the ruination, that 5 mana swing, that is the punish. When you try to, let's say, Vengeance a Xerath, and they use Ancient Hourglass on it, that is a hard punish. They don't even need to do anything with the 4 mana swing that they just got. The fact that they have now summoned a landmark that will break and summon another unit, thus progressing the level up of Xerath and Azir, as well as proccing Xerath's ability, is already a hard punish. So that 4 mana is just a super bonus. It makes it very hard to try and remove the champions before they level up, which is what you are supposed to be doing. The fact that it's such an upside is huge. Same thing with Zillion Echo. If you Ruinate me, and I Rite of Negation that, whatever I do with that 5 excess mana, that's the punish. If you Ruination me, and I Chrono Break, you probably lose the game. And I still have 6 mana left over. And again, I don't have to stick these champions for that to happen. They just have to touch down. So I think it's a matter of the champions being hard to interact with, the deck fundamentally changing once these champions have touched Earth, and then the insane punishes of the protection spells. Aside from just the mana swing, it's just like the Ancient Hourglass and the Chrono Break and what they do on their own is very, very punishing. And it makes it scarier to try and play your removal spells, because if you do lose the mana advantage, then you cannot respond to this like insane punish card. That's more of a Chrono Break thing than an Ancient Hourglass thing. But those are just kind of like thoughts that I wanted to get out there, because honestly, I don't really have much to say about the meta. I feel like I kind of got it down last week with the pseudo triangle thing. And it's really just about of like what flavor of lineup do you feel like bringing. Aggro is still in there somewhere. It's not doing phenomenal, but it is topping because it can pick on Shurima, and it can also pick on Pantheon if that is something that is coming into like these Yordles and Arms lineups, or even the Yordles and Arms itself. It's not immune to aggro. But yeah, outside of that, things are feeling pretty solved. Or at least as solved as they are going to get by Wednesday, when we get our whole new slew of buffs and nerfs and all that. So that's going to be the seasonal patch. Very excited for that. We don't have a lot of time with that meta before the seasonal happens. I think we have like 2.5 weeks. So I'm going to be in grind mode for that. Keep an ear to the ground on the Giant Slayer LOR channel, because I'm going to be trying to pump out like day 1 deck profiles. You won't see them for a little bit because they take time to edit, but like, I kind of want to get things out as soon as I can. But again, as cool as it is that this is the 100th Tournament Tactician, and as much as I love to see how far the series has come and how much you guys enjoy it, there's really just not a lot to say or do for this 100th episode, because it is just the last week of a meta, and I feel like I got a lot of things right last week, and there's not really any like super in-depth thoughts that I had other than that little Shurima rant that I had, which like doesn't even pertain to this. Again, this is like, as much as I enjoy that people enjoy Tournament Tactician, this series is for me. It's for me to look back on as historical evidence. It's also for me to kind of like say things and get them documented on video. So that's what you've all been witnessing. But I do very much like that people enjoy this and get help from it. So that is the end of patch 3.4. Finally putting a nail on this coffin. Online League Series this weekend, $100 on the line. Say goodbye to this meta if you feel like it. If not, we understand it wasn't the best. But yeah, we know that Sundisk nerfs are coming. We know that a couple other nerfs are coming. Sundisk was the one that like really stood out in my mind. Yordles and Arms is getting nerfed as well. So, we might end up in a control-heavy meta. It kind of depends, because I don't remember seeing any control cards on the chopping block, but like Ambush is on there. Shurima's on there. Yordles and Arms is on there. So like a lot of the things that are not control are getting touched, but without knowing what the buffs are, it's impossible to say, okay, now control is going to take over. But that's that. It's that on patch 3.4. Thank you so much for watching. As always, my name is Boulevard. Here's to 100 episodes. Here's to 100 more.